Welcome back to Just Talking with Joe Burdick. There are some conversations you prepare for, and then there are conversations that you feel the weight of before you ever hit record. Today is one of those. On August 26, 2021, during the final days of the war in Afghanistan, a terrorist attack at Abbey took the lives of 13 service members. Among them was Marine Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz. But before he was a Marine, before he was one of the 13, Jared was a son. He he was family. He was someone who laughed, who lived, who made an impact on the people around him in ways that go far beyond a headline. Today, we're honored to be joined by his father, Mark Schmitz. This isn't just a conversation about loss. It's about who Jared was, the decision to serve his country, the moments that mattered most, and the legacy he leaves behind. We'll talk about the unimaginable day that changed everything, the experience of bringing a hero home through a dignified transfer, and what it means to carry that kind of love and that kind of loss forward. This episode will be difficult at times, but it is an important one because behind every uniform is a story. And today we tell Jared's. Mark, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
The people that know me, they know that I'm a big advocate for the 13. It's personal for me. I've gotten to become friends with a couple of the Gold Star families. And I have a saying that we can't promise to never forget if we don't learn their names and we don't learn their stories. I know Jared's name, but I don't know his story. So I reached out to you so you can introduce Jared to me. And again, thank you for doing this. I know it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy for me even to ask questions, but I'm grateful that you are. And I also wanted to say right off the beginning is thank you for Jared's service and his sacrifice.
He would do it again.
So for the people that don't know who Jared was, who was he before he was a Marine?
He was your typical goofy American boy. I mean, he grew up. His mother and I divorced early when he was very young, and um, we shared custody initially, and he bounced back and forth from her house to my house. But he always had a great time, whether he was with her or with me. Just a very energetic kid. He was a natural athlete. He excelled at just about anything that he set his mind to, and wasn't huge in worrying about grades and school so much as he was just loving life and living it to the fullest. But he started telling us at the age of 8, I believe, that he had expressed interest in becoming a Marine. And I know I remember sharing with him that, at that age, I wanted to be an astronaut, a trash man, and a sniper. So you don't really know when you're that young, but it was admirable that that's what he wanted to do. And of course, he got into playing the Call of Duty games on Xbox like so many young guys do. I couldn't tell you how many times I had to remind him that you don't get the opportunity to hit the reset button, in real life. And of course, I know, Dad, and that was always his reaction. But he was a brother to. Ultimately, I remarried, and now he has 2 younger sisters, and he was a tremendous big brother to them and a role model to both his sisters as well as his new stepbrother, who was 2 years younger than him. And then he's got 2 older brothers that are now actually both are married now. One's living in Chicago, and the other one is still living here, one being my ex-wife's son, pardon me, and then the other being my son from a previous relationship. But besides being a great role model to his younger sisters and younger brother, he was a a tremendous friend to everyone. I have racked my brain. I can't think of a single time that my son ever had an enemy. He was just well liked by all, and he had every type of friend you could possibly imagine, whether that was a skin color or race or religion or private school versus public school. It didn't matter. He just got along with everyone, which I loved about him. And he was never a real big kid. He, despite being great in athletics, he was about 5'9", so wasn't super tall, but his little stature, he had a mighty roar. Let's put it that way. And by that I mean, whenever there were situations where he saw someone getting bullied, for example, he'd be the guy that would stand up in front of the bully and tell him to knock it off. Because he always looked out for the little guy, and he was, in my opinion, a little small himself, but that didn't matter. He knew the difference between right and wrong, and he wanted to make sure that those that couldn't take care of themselves at least had some sort of protection. And when I started to see that in him as he was in high school, and I knew that his course of wanting to become a Marine was the right decision for him. And that really solidified itself his junior year. He reached out to his mom and myself and asked us if we'd be willing to sign the pre-enlistment paperwork for him at the age of 17. And it's a scary thought, but I knew this was his life goal. And for how long, I didn't know. I don't think he knew, how long he planned on being in, but this is something he needed to do for himself and for his country. And so we both agreed to sign off on it. He graduates high school and immediately is off to Camp Pendleton, fulfilling his dream.
So what did you think when he told you that, when you ultimately signed off on that paperwork? I mean, were you proud? Were you nervous?
You're all of it. I mean, as a parent, the real risks, unlike a teenager who is just living high on the thought of being, a U.S. Marine. And I knew the realities of what that meant. I mean, I follow the news on a regular basis. I know what's going on in the world. But I wasn't going to stand in the way of him pursuing that dream. And it wasn't like something that just came out of nowhere. I mean, the local St. Peter's Marine recruiting office, Jared, when he turned 16, could care less about getting his driver's license. He didn't even attempt to. So we were driving him around everywhere. But every single Saturday for a solid year, he would ask us to take him to the St. Peter's Marine recruiting office so he could actually train with the guys that had actually already signed their paperwork. Jared hadn't even done that yet. And they were kind enough to let him participate in all of the exercises. And he was there religiously and so devoted, they actually let him run a couple of the little training exercises that they had. And it didn't matter if it was snowing out, raining out, hot, he was there. And I'd never seen my son so focused on something in my entire life. And I knew this was something big and something that meant so much to him that I had to support him. And I was proud to do so. But you're always scared, in the back of your mind. You got to think about the absolute worst case scenario.
Did he have a lot of veterans in the family?
Most of my family was Navy. My brother-in-law, my father, my cousin. For a while there, I thought he was just going to the Marine Corps so he could crack the jokes with the Navy guys in the family. But now he knew that was the toughest branch to get into. It was the most demanding, and that's why he wanted to go that route. More power to him. He finished that crucible and got his pin, and he was on top of the world.
So what was boot camp like for him?
Well, he did fine. I mean, he had he had researched on what he needed to really be able to do to make it through. It's never easy for anyone, but he didn't complain ever. He was nervous about the crucible. I don't think you're human if you're not concerned about trying to get through the crucible. But the only time he ever reached out to me and complained was when he was at 29 Palms. he said, "Dad, there's not a freaking palm tree anywhere in sight."
And it's named 29 Palms and no palms.
Yeah, well, it's where they do all their big munition, bombs and grenade launchers and all that good stuff, all the big toys. But you're just out in the middle of nowhere. You're having it tented, and you lose all the luxuries of that you have back home with air conditioning and running water and all that. So got a little taste of reality there. But I think the biggest problem that he ever had anytime that he was at Pendleton was during COVID. He's like, we're having to do these ruck marches with face masks on, and it's already hard enough to do one without the mask. So throw the mask into it too, and you got the heat and not being able to breathe really well through those things. That was the only time I recall him ever questioning if he made the right choice. And that was a very simple, short conversation I had with him, because I said, look, if you give up now, you're going to come back home and they're going to make you wear the stupid mask here too. So you have made this your life goal. You're there. You're most of the way through. Just see it out. And he did. I think he was just happened to be frustrated that day. I think everybody in the country is pretty much.
I was going to say, weren't we all?
Yeah. So I had a feeling we were going to see an end in sight to the COVID nightmare that we all had to live through. And he did. And when he finally made it to graduation, we were lucky enough to be able to attend that. And that was something that I will never forget. I think just the most fun part was trying to find him afterwards, because he had slimmed down so much after 9 weeks. We had no idea what the hell he even looked like anymore. And then the Corps actually made him wear glasses. Apparently his eyesight wasn't that great. So here's a skinny, lean kid that's now got glasses on, and it made it really quite challenging to find him. But that was the proudest day for all of us, and especially for him.
Did you notice any changes in him? I don't mean physically, but after he became a Marine?
A lot of maturity. He really, I was watching him become a young man before he left, and then in that short amount of time, not being able to communicate with him in any way, shape, or form, and then finally being reintroduced to him after he graduated. We immediately we rented a home on the beach, not too far from Pendleton, and got to spend a few days with him. And I saw a change in him already, that he had just really grown up. And I don't know if it's simply because he knew he was now a Marine, but just the hammering that you go through and going through boot, making him aware that he's not some little punk ass little kid anymore. And, there's rules to follow and chain of command to answer to and all this and that. He did a lot of growing up, and it was wonderful to see. He was still a lot of fun. He was still the crazy, goofy kid he always was, but there was just something about his demeanor that he had done some serious maturing in that short amount of time.
So what did it mean to him to wear that uniform? Because that's a sharp ass uniform that the Marines wear.
They got the best one. He actually came home on one of his leaves, and I told him to bring his dress blues, and he's like, I can't wear that. I said, I understand. But my father, his grandpa, was in a nursing home and was soon to be on hospice, and I knew he wasn't going to be around much longer. My dad being retired Navy, so I made him change in the car so we could walk into my father's room at the nursing home, and he wasn't even paying attention, didn't know we were even standing there initially. And when I got my dad's attention, there's Jared standing there proud, in his dress blues, basically a naked chest because there was nothing. He didn't have anything at this point. But my dad, despite being very frail and weak and whatnot, he immediately, without anybody saying anything to him, he got himself up out of bed and stood at the best attention he could and gave my son a full salute.
Did you get a picture of that?
I didn't. I did not. I wish I would have. But
Oh.
Jared returned the salute, and then they had a nice long embrace. And Grandpa, my dad was so proud of him achieving this. And then my dad passed away shortly after that, a couple of weeks later. So I was just very happy to see that my dad got to see Jared in his uniform.
Right. And how proud were you watching this journey of Jared going from that goofy little kid to being a Marine?
Well, he and I were always competitive with each other all the time, so I always had to tell him, you still think you can take down your old man, with all the hand-to-hand stuff he'd been learning, and so we always just smack talked each other in that regard. But I couldn't be more proud of the young man he was becoming, and
right.
You do everything you can as a father to try to instill standards and morality into your kids so that they become upstanding citizens as they grow up. And I had no concerns with Jared, especially after he was out of the Corps and coming home on leave. I mean, I knew that the Marine Corps definitely helped me out on that one and got him to a very respectable level of being a wonderful young man.
So after he graduated boot camp, what was it like after that? I don't have the right terminology. I'm a Navy guy, so whatever. Did they send him to school, or did he go to his next duty station? What happened after boot camp?
He came home on leave and then went back for infantry school and got through all that. He came home on another leave and went back, and that's when you had all the COVID stuff going on, and he finally had gotten orders for a deployment, which he didn't think was ever going to come. And we were excited for him. Of course, we were nervous, but he was just going to Jordan. So, granted, it's the other side of the world, and you're much closer to be rerouted to an area of need, if need be, easier than from San Diego. But, he was excited to be able to do that. That was, I don't have much to say about Pendleton. They just did what everybody does in the Corps over there. But he did get he was awarded something for his marksmanship. I know he was only like a point or two off of perfect on his iron sight 500, I believe it was, yard shot. And I always joke with him. I said, you really ought to go to sniper school. And he's like, Dad, it's just too much math. So I said, well, I get that. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of math involved, but you're a hell of a shot, and that's not even using the scope. So he at the same time, my son was quite the ladies' man. He had a lot of girlfriends, and I even tried to use that angle. I'm like, Jared, imagine you're in a bar with your buddies, and these fine-looking ladies come up to you, and they're like, what do you do for a living? And I say, and your answer is, I'm a Marine sniper. I said, it's in the bag. I'm like, yeah. He said, yeah, Dad, but it's still too much math. So that's like, all right, I give up. But when he was in Jordan, he actually was given the opportunity to shoot with the DM, the designated marksman over there, which was a proud moment. And he was stoked to be able to do that. And so, of course, once again, I reminded him of sniper school. And once again, I got the same response. But his girlfriend that he was dating here before he left for the Corps actually went into the Air Force. And she was stationed in Arizona. And after he passed, she actually went ahead and put herself through sniper school and passed. So she's actually a certified sniper
Hmm.
within the Air Force. So that was kind of exciting, and kind of wish Jared was still around. I can give him a little hell about that. You gotta let your girlfriend do it, but you can't do it.
So
So
when he was in Jordan, did you get to talk a lot?
not a lot. I mean, it was once a week or so. Just what are you doing? And he would send us pictures of him riding on donkeys and
Hmm.
holding falcons. And uh, there was I think it was one of the uh, Indiana Jones movies or something where you have the ruins up in the cliffs where they're like homes that are built right into the cliffs or something. And he was standing out in front of that, and just he loved it. I mean, just being out there with his brothers and doing the Marine thing, and at least even though they were still just training all the time, it was a whole new environment, and he knew he was not in the United States; he was overseas, and this is what he was signing up to do. And he said ultimately he hopes he was going to go to Okinawa. That never did happen, but because they got the call up while he was in Jordan to go to initially Kuwait and then ultimately right from there into Kabul.
Did he ever express concerns about or fears about going to Afghanistan?
Not to me, no. I mean, I can't say he didn't have it in his gut, having concerns, but he never voiced them to me. When he did get that call to have to go to Afghanistan, he wouldn't tell me where he was going. I don't think they're allowed to. But again, I watched the news. I knew exactly where he was going because
Right.
that's the only place anything was happening. So once he landed there, that's when everything was real. And I did speak to him. I guess it was about a day and a half after they landed in Kabul, and I could hear it in his voice. He was scared. Um, he knew this was real now, and he said that he said, I thought we were going to die that first day
Hmm.
because it was utter chaos. And I mean, the airport, the tarmac, everything was overrun. I mean, we all remember seeing the Afghans falling from the planes, trying to escape. And, um, it took a monumental lift to get these people under some sort of control to where they could then begin to do what they needed to do in a capacity that was had some sense of order. And I mean, if you can imagine tens of thousands of frantic, desperate people that are, as far as I know, if they get turned around, they're going to be killed. So of course they're going to do everything they can to move forward. And you've got a very small platoon of Marines and Army that are trying to hold these people back and get them corralled into some sensible order. I mean, it had to be a living nightmare. Um, while he was there, he went out on to the Abbey gate, and that's where he remained the entire time he was there. Um, at one point, he had told me that they were going to move him from the Abbey gate and put him on the tarmac. And this was, of course, after everything had gotten more under control. Um, I don't mean to get ahead of myself in this conversation, but when I was watching the news like everyone else, and I saw that there was a bomb that went off at the Abbey gate, my initial reaction was my son's okay because he's on the tarmac, because that was our last conversation. And time went by. I didn't initially expect to hear from him right away, just because obviously it's just chaos again. Um, but then the hours grew into more hours and more hours, and I called a buddy of mine that was a Marine, and he said, "Mark, he's got his hands full right now. He'll get back to you. Don't worry about it." And with that, I went to bed, and at 2:42 in the morning, I found out that my son was not on the tarmac. He, in fact, was at the Abbey gate the whole time. And he was part of the 13 service members that were sacrificed at the Abbey gate, and 170 some odd Afghan civilians that were killed, the 40 plus critically wounded service members on August 26th, 21. And
Yeah. How did you receive that news?
well, we after Jared left for Pendleton, uh, we had sold our house and bought a new house 20 minutes west of where we used to live. And Jared apparently never updated his paperwork within the Corps about the new address change. So the Keiko officers that came to deliver the news actually went to our old address first, knocked on the new homeowner's door. And so this guy who bought our old house actually found out about my son before we did. And he called the police because there were two figures outside the front door at 1:30 in the morning, and he obviously it freaked him out. So he calls the cops. Well, the police show up. These guys are obviously in uniform. They explain to the police why they're there. The police immediately understood and got on their computers trying to figure out where we lived, and were able to find our address and rerouted the Marine Keiko officers to our house, the new house. And so at about 2:42 in the morning, I get a knock on the door. I don't even know how that, to this day, I don't know how I heard it, because it seemed like it was just a real faint knock. And I stuck my head out of the master bedroom, and I could see two silhouettes outside the door, and flipped the light on. I don't know. Normally at that point I would have grabbed my pistol just because I don't know who's at my door, but
Yeah.
something told me not to worry about it. So I went to the door, and as I got closer, I could kind of see through the slightly opaque glass that these guys had medals on. And I yelled back to my wife, who was still sleeping, Jared's stepmom, and I said, "You need to get up, come to the door." And they confirmed our identity first, luckily, because they already just went through this nightmare with the pretty old neighbor. But initially, my knee-jerk reaction was to try to will this to be some sort of an injury visit. Like, your son's been injured in the explosion, and here's the extent of his injuries. Stupidly now, looking back, but that's just what I was, I guess, hoping that they were there for, knowing full well in the back of my mind that they don't do that. So we invited them in. We sat at our dining room table, and that's when they proceeded to tell us that Jared was one of the 13 that was tragically killed earlier that day. And it's interesting when you're given news like that. You basically have one of two reactions. Either you just lose it, which nobody would ever question why, or that's a problem, or the other, which in my case, I was in utter shock. I sat there like just staring right through these guys. Like I could hear them, but nothing was sinking in. And I was just asking the most random of questions, and my wife is over there just sobbing, and nothing was clicking. I mean, you're literally, I was just woken up, so you got the fog brain from being asleep to being given this god awful terrible news. And in my mind, my son's invincible. He's going to die of an old age like he's supposed to. And it wasn't until 45 minutes later, when we wrapped up the conversation and we walked them to the door, I shut the door. I looked at my wife. I could see it in her face that this was real. This wasn't a nightmare. And that's when it all hit me like a ton of bricks. I literally collapsed right there on the floor, and she's trying to hold me up. She's half my size, and that wasn't happening. And we were trying to not be too loud too, because our daughters were sleeping upstairs, and we were in no condition to explain anything to them at that point. So we just went to the living room, sat on the couch, and we flipped the news on to see if there's any more information, and we talked, and it obviously cried, and I was pissed.
Sure.
I was hurt more, but I was definitely pissed. Like, how the hell did this even happen? And to this day, I'm pissed. I am 100% convinced our kids were sacrificed out there. They were left as the sacrificial offering on something that never should have happened. And to this day, we still don't have any viable answers whatsoever. To this day, nobody that was involved over there has ever been held accountable, and it's disgusting. And unfortunately, it's about 6-7 months after this, there's another young Marine named Colin, who Jared actually went to freshman year of high school with. He joined the Marine Corps about 7 months after Jared, and he was off the East Coast doing a training exercise and jumped out of the helicopter, and the chute opened and everything, but something went wrong with his gear, and he ended up drowning. So not the same type of scenario, but we now have a new Gold Star mom that, ironically, her son and my son knew each other. And she reached out to me pretty quickly asking, how do I go about getting answers about what happened? And I said, well, the minute you find out, you let me know, because we're having no luck getting the Department of State or DOD to talk. In her son's situation, it was a training exercise. It was just an accident, a tragic accident, but an accident. And to this day, she still has not gotten any closure whatsoever. It just appalls me that, nobody's sitting here trying to sue the government or sue the Marine Corps or anything like that. We just want the closure.
Right.
And the people that made these terrible mistakes to be held accountable, as they should, because the only way that this is never going to happen again is if those that screw up are removed from those positions, and this is used as a future teaching tool of what not to do. And we've found out a lot of things from behind the scenes that none of it makes any sense. When our kids were at the Abbey gate along those canals, they were spread out intentionally, because you didn't want to collapse that column into a tight bundle, because that makes for a prime opportunity for somebody to detonate a bomb like what they did. And there were all kinds of incoming threats. Tyler Vargas Andrews, who many people have heard of, the sniper from the tower, he had his eyes on a guy that matched the description of what description they were given, and he was calling out for permission to shoot. And that's when Lieutenant Colonel Whitehead basically, he asked him, can I shoot him? He says, I don't know. This is your direct commander. How the hell do you not know? Right. And he said, I'll find out, and leaves. Well, while he left, that's when the bomb goes off. But we have all talked with Tyler since all this happened, and Tyler's an incredible human being. He's come forward more than anybody else that's been over there to try to stand up for what's right and to call out the people that should be called out. He's an incredible hero in my book. And from the collapse of that column to not being able to shoot, I mean, there were so many things that could have been prevented from this happening. Our gate, the Abbey gate, should have been closed already. Somebody, which again, nobody has given up a name yet, somebody forced that gate to stay open longer than it should have. All the other ones had already closed. Basically, they were locking it down, and that was going to be that. Whoever was in is getting on those planes and getting the hell out of there. Whoever didn't make it in, unfortunately, that's probably going to be whatever happens to them. There's nothing we could do about it at that point. I mean, they had successfully got 120,000 plus individuals out of there, which unfortunately now we find out that many of them should have never left Afghanistan, bad actors, etc. We've been told that Department of State was the ones that were qualified to actually look at the paperwork and know if it's legitimate or not. And they operated on basically the equivalent of banking hours. They'd show up at 8 or 9 in the morning with a cup of hot coffee. They'd sit there and work throughout the day, and then the bell goes off, the whistle blows at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and they're done for the day. And they go back and, do what they do. Meanwhile, all our Marines are over here babysitting people they're pulling out of the shit canals, pardon my French, and,
it's all right.
Babysitting them on the wall all night while they wait for the Department of State to finally show back up to work again the next day. And, you knew that this was going to be a monstrous undertaking. And they send a skeleton crew of State Department people who should have just simply trained as many Marines as they could. Here's what you need to look for, and then they get the hell out of the way and let the military do what they needed to do. This was a military operation at this point. When threats were starting to come in of bombings and suicide vests and IEDs and cars and things. I mean, lots of things are being called in. But first and foremost is the location of where all this happened. This all happened in an urban airport at the Kabul HKIA airport. Where this should have happened was at Bagram that we held up to right prior to this until Biden just gave it up. It was the largest air base in that entire area, the entire region, and we could have conducted operations from there so much more efficiently and so much more safely. And I think a lot of the Afghans that had no business trying to get out probably would have put the effort into traveling that further distance to get to Bagram than it was so easy being right there in the urban environment. But you got high buildings, you got sniper towers essentially all around you. Just idiocracy. I mean, I didn't serve, but this doesn't take a genius to figure out this is a terrible place to conduct such a mission. And, these are things that I have complained about since day one that make no sense. And, you've got 4-star generals like Milley and Secretary Austin and these buffoons that had no business running anything. That still can't look us in the eye and give us a direct answer without, just a bunch of foobar. And
that's a veteran word.
I know. We had a private meeting with General Milley while we were in D.C. So there's a family of a coalition family. There's 8 of us out of the 13 families that kind of had just grouped together tightly from day one. We knew we are going to fight this all the way until we can't fight it anymore. Fighting for answers, fighting for accountability. Some other families didn't want to be part of it. There are a multitude of reasons, political differences, grieving differences. I mean, we don't hold any disregard to anybody that didn't want to be a part of the coalition. But those of us that stuck with it and still are part of it, we were the ones that were at the Foreign Affairs Family Roundtable and got wind that General Milley had been watching that whole thing and that he wanted to have a meeting with the families that would be willing to meet with him. This was off book. This was no press, no nothing. It was actually held in a private residence, and it was just General Milley and then the families that wanted to be there. And this man had the nerve, after being asked, would you do anything different now that you know the outcome? And he said no. And we all just kind of looked at each other like, you realize who you're sitting in front of right now, right? Just I can't even wrap any logical explanation as to why they did what they did over there. I mean, between poor planning to terrible decision making to not being able to stand up to to Biden, I don't know. I mean, what other reason is there that these guys would allow this stupidity to happen and then ultimately sacrifice so many people? I mean, you can't discount all these Afghans that were there that got killed too that day. You know, it's right. You're talking 200 people almost, and not to mention the wounded that still carry all their scars and
right.
mental distress from everything they went through. I mean, even the guys that don't have a mark on them, you know, have obviously been traumatically affected by what happened over there. And it's the military's stance and Department of State to just, you know, I know the rest of Biden's term, he didn't want to even have the word Afghanistan brought up in the White House.
Mm-mm.
I'm not sitting here going political, don't get me wrong, but what kind of president are you if you can't even sit there and reflect on what the hell happened, and even much worse, ever even utter our kids' names out loud? Not
Didn't he say that not one service member was killed while he was president?
Yeah, he also said that. But I literally had to stop. I think that was a State of the Union, and I had to pause it, rewind, listen to it like 3 or 4 times. I'm like, did I mishear this? I'm like, are you kidding?
So one of the things that I learned, speaking of Tyler Vargas Andrews, when he was on the Sean Ryan podcast, giving up Bagram and leaving all that stuff behind. I think people just think, oh, big deal. We left some stuff behind. The Taliban used that stuff on us, on Jared, on Abbey Gate, trying to ram the gates with our trucks, shooting with our whatever the Marines shoot, M16s. They use our weapons against our people. I was shocked when I heard him say that.
Well, even more importantly, the guy that ultimately detonated the vest came from that prison.
Yeah.
That was released. So thank you again, President Biden. None of it makes sense. You know, just a high school kid could have made better choices that never served one lick of 1 minute in the military, could have made more common sense decisions that would have been more rational than what was done over there. It's just mind-boggling. And these reports that keep coming out, they do what they always do. They give you a here's the report. It's 5,000 pages long. You know, enjoy your bathroom reading material. You know, it's just cut to the chase. Get to the nitty-gritty. Who did what? Who said what? Who, you know,
right? And
I keep getting told by veterans, you're never going to know, and I've kind of accepted that. But you know,
yeah,
when this kind of stuff keeps happening like that, all it's going to do is continue to happen. You know, and stupid decisions are going to be made because nobody's going to learn a damn thing from mistakes that were made before.
Right.
And nothing's going to bring our kids back. Nothing's going to fix these mental scars that so many of our troops have from being over there. So many of them knew somebody that was either injured or killed over there and have to live with that loss now for the rest of their lives. And, you know, it's the mental part of this that bothers me the most, you know, with these poor kids that were over there that and I keep calling them kids because in my mind, most of them were. I mean, a bunch of ours that were killed were 20, 21 years old.
Right.
You know, Taylor Hoover was the oldest at the early 30s.
Right.
And, you know, nobody was even close to that. I think one of the girls, Pichardo, I think was 26 maybe, but most of them were in their early 20s, you know. And after all this happened, there's a lot of things that I would have probably never been privy to knowing anything, but we started to see things that didn't add up. And I'm not talking about what happened. I'm talking about like the death benefit. When a soldier, Marine, Airman, Corpsman is killed in action, the family is issued a death benefit check. Nobody cares about the money.
Right.
Unless like you're a wife and a widow now and have young kids you have to raise. But as a parent, we don't care about the stupid money. We want our kid back. But we found out that the payout for that is $400,000. It's been like that for 20 some odd years. Well, look at the value of the dollar now compared to what it was 20 years ago. So we're advocating right now, trying to get that bumped, not proactively, but just moving forward.
Right.
Any service member that's killed, their family should be paid out $1 million, just flat. That to be used however they see fit. If that's to raise their kids, whatever. It's basically their life insurance policy. And another thing is the GI Bill. Again, most of these kids were super young. None of them had any kids, except Riley McCullum would have been a dad had he survived another 2 weeks, I think it was. And his fiance gave birth to his first son. And he was obviously not here for that. But the GI Bill died with our kids. So again, Jared had 2 younger sisters. It would be really nice if that GI Bill would be passed on to younger siblings. If you have, say, a Marine or Army or whatever that's not married, you know, keep it in the family, of course, but be able to offer that to their younger siblings. The paperwork that these kids have to fill out. One party is named basically the primary decision maker for all things that have to do with that person's life, their remains, their funeral arrangements, everything. There's certain paperwork that these kids had to fill out while at Pendleton that there's no excuse or no reason why that stuff shouldn't be taken care of at home. You know, so you could be in front of your attorney or your parents or your wife or your husband or, you know, somebody that might be able to have this extra set of eyes on it to help them making decisions. And that goes to like their profit sharing. You know, these kids are getting a minimal paycheck for doing what they do, but they have free room and board, free food and all that. So a big chunk of their money that they do have it coming in ought to be just maxed out and thrown into a profit sharing for their 401k, their retirement. Jared had no idea about what to do with any of that. I had to explain it to him that max that thing out. You don't need your cash right now. You know, those types of things should be handled at home prior to them going off to Pendleton.
Yeah.
These are very important documents. I won't get into the nitty gritty of why the appointing who's in charge of what is so crucial, but just I'll give you one analogy. Imagine a young Marine has a new girlfriend of 3 months, and he's filling out his paperwork and makes this girlfriend the primary designated person. Well, the whole time he's gone, she's cheating on him, or, you know, they break up, whatever.
Right.
Well, when they pass, the money goes to her. The decisions go to her. And unless that young service member made any changes, then that it is what it is. That's the Bible of the military, and there's no deviating from that. Which that's a hugely important person to be able to know if you're putting the right person in there or not. and I'll leave it at that. But you know, there's just some changes that need to take place that have been around for so long and just have never been touched, and they need to be. You know, and these are things that unfortunately we've had to live through, and I don't know. It's frustrating to say the least, but the not getting the closure from your own Department of Defense is incredibly heart wrenching. You know, these kids, they volunteer, you know, and it takes a special kind of hero, as you know, you've served, to even sign your name on that dotted line. And it's what, 1% of the U.S. population dedicates at least numerous years to serving their country. I think they're afforded, or should be afforded, a bit more respect than what we see the families getting after something like this happens.
Yeah. One of the things that I learned, it had to be 3-4 years ago, that it's a post 9/11 thing, but a service member can transfer his GI Bill benefits if he thinks he's not gonna go to college, or so he could transfer it to a sibling. Well, after what happened at Abbey Gate, I started asking the question. I said, well, what about if the service member is KIA and they don't get an opportunity to transfer that to a sibling or whatever? What happens to the benefits? And I was told they just go away. So I was at the time, J.D. Vance was an Ohio senator, and obviously I'm in Ohio. I was working with then Senator Vance's office about getting legislation enacted that would be part of that paperwork that they fill out in the beginning, not later on if they decide that they don't want to use the GI Bill benefits, but to designate somebody in the event that something happens, you know, their younger sister or brother or whatever would get their benefits. And then once JD Vance was nominated to be vice president, it all went away.
Yeah.
But that was my first thing with trying to make changes, because I knew that there were so many siblings, you know, that could have used those GI Bill benefits. So that
Well,
was
just
my
look at the average age of who enlists.
20,
They're
like you
18,
said.
19,
Oh,
18,
yeah, when they
19,
enlist.
20. I mean, most of the time they don't have kids of their own yet.
Right.
Thankfully. I mean, I think they're too young. But,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's ridiculous. And, you know, there's not very many benefits to being in the military, other than having that veteran badge that you can proudly wear the rest of your life. But, you know, if people think the benefits are so good for being in the military, then there's paperwork you can fill out and sign up. But, you know, I think that's definitely one piece that they need to revisit for sure. Is his oldest younger sister is now 16, and his other sister is now 14. So, you know, we're still in one getting ready to go into high school, one's halfway through. But yeah, we've got college decisions to make coming up, and you know, it sure would be nice. I mean, the kids were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, which I've been told that our daughters should be able to put on their college applications that their older sibling is a recipient of that award, and that should help with some weight on the decision of, you know, them being accepted into a college of their choice. Whether or not that's true or not, that's left to be seen. But it's not an award that's given out very freely to a lot of people. So at the time that they were awarded that, it had only been designated, I think, 184 times in U.S. history prior to them getting their approval for it. So, you know, it's an honor to have that distinguished medal, but it's actually a civilian award. It's not, you don't have to be in the military to receive it. but you know, we'll have some decisions to make with our kids on where they're going to be going to college and
Right.
how the heck we're going to pay for it and all that, but that's life, I guess.
Yeah. So after you got that knock on the door, um, the dignified transfer, what was that like for you?
Um, you fly to Dover and Delaware, and you're transported from the airport to a hotel, and in the hotel lobby is a whole bunch of KCO officers. These are casualty officers that assist the surviving families with what's happening. Um, I was obviously very upset, as anybody was, but I was also very angry um, because I had been following things pretty closely, and I'm like, how in the hell did this happen? So when I showed up at the hotel, they informed us that President Biden would be there tomorrow for the dignified transfer, along with SecDef and Secretary Austin, and the generals, other who's of DC, and are you interested in meeting the president? And I said, hell no, because I had uttered nothing but disgust for this man. And I went back to the hotel room and just sat there enjoying a bottle of bourbon with my son, the best I could. The next morning, I went back down the lobby to get ready to board the bus, and they approached me again and said, "Are you still not wanting to meet the president?" And I said, "Well, actually, I've had a chance to think about it, and if I'm allowed to speak to him, then yes." I'm giving you the very black and white version of all this. It was quite colorful, if you can imagine some of the words I was using. Um,
You can use whatever words you want on this. This isn't a kid show.
okay, well, um, I did tell them that, yeah, I've changed my mind. I would, if I could, as long as I could speak to them and say my piece, then yeah. And they said, well, yes, but just know the Secret Service is going to be all over it. I said, I'm not going to hit the man. I mean, but I obviously have words for this man. Because at that point, the person that was solely responsible for the death of my son was that man. We get to the Air Force Base where the C-130 or whatever the big plane is that brought them all in was already there, parked on the tarmac. The dignitaries come in to, all I could relate it to is like a real long, it's a big open room and it's real narrow and long. And they had what I call pods. So like a couch and chair here, a couch and chair here, couch and chair here, a couch and chair there, all the way down. And each family was parked in a pod. And Jared's mom and I were in the kind of the middle of the room pod. And the dignitaries all came in. And that's when General Milley, I met him for the first time, he leaned into my ear and says, we just bombed the motherfuckers. And that, I didn't know what that meant. I'm like, who is that? Because obviously the guy that killed my son is already gone. So I took that to mean that they somehow had knowledge of who was actually responsible for helping this bomber get through and do what he did. And fast forward a couple of days, we find out obviously they didn't kill anybody but a bunch of innocent people. A guy and a whole bunch of kids. Mm-hmm. But I met Secretary Austin that day. After the dignitaries left, we sat there and we sat there and we sat there, which I believe was like another hour and a half waiting for Biden to come in. I've been told since then that he was on the plane napping. I don't know if that's true or not. Wouldn't be
I've heard the
shocked at
same
all.
story.
While all the families are literally just sitting there, and he finally shows up, and he's talking loud enough that you can kind of make out some of what he's saying, but not the whole personal conversation that he's having with the family 2 pods down or across from you or whatever. Well, I kept hearing Bo's name over and over again. And at that time, I didn't even know who the hell Bo was. And so I had obviously some time to kill. So I started researching Biden and Bo, and then found out that Bo was his son. Well, he was basically just regurgitating the same damn thing to every single family. And instead of spending time talking about their loved one who was just killed, he's talking about his own damn son. And there's a pattern to how they're routing him. He's going down one, across, down one, across, down one, across. He gets to us, which would have been our turn, and the Secret Service rerouted him away from us to go to another family and continue on down the room. And I'm like, well, this is weird. I guess we're last. Or maybe they forgot about us. Who knows? Well, by the time it was our turn, they had either voluntarily or involuntarily escorted everybody out of the room. So it was more or less just my ex-wife, myself, and Secret Service. And I could only describe it as like cowboys and Indians. So she and I are like the cowboys in the middle. And then there's a ring of Indians around us, right? The Indians being Secret Service. So it's me, her, Biden, and his wife in the middle. And the Secret Service was a fair distance away. I mean, 15 feet maybe. So a pretty large perimeter. And he comes up and just mumbles a bunch of nothing. And my ex-wife takes out her phone and says, "Can I show you a picture of our son?" And she pulls it up on her phone and hands him the phone, and he's looking at it. And I can just see in his eyes, he's like looking right through it. He's not even, nothing's even registering. So I leaned down and I kind of looked up at him. I go, "That's my son, Jared. Say his name. Learn his story." And the best way I could describe his response was like he barked at me. He goes, "I know their stories." And I was taken back by that. And at that very fleeting moment, I just wanted to throat punch that asshole. Because here I am grieving and you're disrespecting the shit out of me by raising your voice at me. I was livid. And I guess Secret Service is obviously, they're very well trained. Let's just put it that way, because that circle got real small real quick. Nothing ever obviously happened, but I commend those guys. They were like ninjas. I didn't even see them move, but the next thing you know, they're right on you. But that was a terrible, terrible experience, and I honestly wish I had stuck to my guns and just joined the other families that chose not to meet him. They were left in a private room with the door closed, so they didn't even have to see the man. But then after he walks out, the families are put in a bus and taken over to the tarmac. And you have media on one side, the bus in between them, and then us. So the media can get a shot at who's on the other side of the tarmac, the president, the generals, all that. They cannot see or film us at all, but they could hear us. And then the most offensive thing started to happen, which we all have heard about. And that's when the first casket comes off. He's standing at attention. But as soon as that casket's put on the van, he comes down from his I don't remember if he saluted or if he put his hand on his heart, but whatever it was, every time he would go and look at his watch and then slowly lower his arm. And the first time I saw that, I was like, okay. Did it second time. Did it third time. Now I'm getting pissed. I'm like, where in the hell does he have to be that he's having to look at his watch so damn much? I leaned into my ex-wife's ear and I said, so help me God, if he looks at that watch another time, I'm going to yell out, it's 2:30. So he knows what time it is. And I'm going to embarrass the shit out of him because this is appalling. I mean, all the other families were just flabbergasted. They were like, oh my God, do you see what we're seeing?
We were all flabbergasted when we saw that, just so you know. It was
Well,
horrible.
I've heard several outlets and several people that try to say he was not looking at his watch. Somebody even said he was praying a rosary. I'm like, I'm an avid Catholic. Don't even go there. You know, that is sacrilegious in my mind to even try to put that into the equation. But and others were saying he never did it. I'm like, it's on video. What is wrong with you? You know. Well, anyway, my CACO officer could see I was getting pretty agitated and ready to pop off, and he taps me on the shoulder. He goes, "Don't." And I said, "What?" And he points back, and there's Secret Service snipers in the towers over my right shoulder. I'm like, "Oh, okay." Well, it's not like I was going to run across the tarmac, you know. But out of respect to these other families, I didn't know them obviously at all. And I didn't want to make a big scene, but this was getting to be absurd. And then after about the fifth one, I couldn't even watch anymore. So I can't speak to beyond number 5 if he continued to check his watch, but he did for those first 5. And I refused to even look in his general direction. It was the biggest spit in the face that you could possibly imagine. I mean, here's your son dead. We don't even know what kind of condition he's in. And here's a president who's most certainly involved in what happened to some degree. We don't know yet, but checking his goddamn watch while we're waiting because we were told what number our kids were coming off. And there were 2 from the 2 families that didn't want Biden to be a part of it. Those caskets were to remain on the plane, and they got a private ceremony of them bringing them off. So we knew Jared was at the tail end of it, but I mean, just imagine your loved one is in a box coming off a plane, and the man who's to some degree responsible for that is checking his goddamn watch. It's over and over and over and over again. It's appalling, unforgivable as well. I mean, I'll never forgive that man for that. And anybody who tries to argue otherwise, that it was anything but what it was, I tell them to go fuck off, because I stood there and watched every goddamn one of them.
Right.
Sorry, you got me fired up there.
That's okay. Don't apologize. So when you were in the building and he was talking to the families, how long was the plane there? I mean, I'm assuming the plane was there waiting.
Yeah.
I mean, when I think about it, I think you guys probably couldn't care less about having a bunch of conversations when you just want to, be with your kid.
It's the formality. I mean, that's what they do. They bring in dignitaries. Like now it would be Pete Hegseth, and the top generals would be there, and JD Vance and Trump. It's the process. It's what they do.
Yeah.
And I mean, the dignitaries, despite my feelings about them now, they were at least genuine. I mean, I could say that for Millie and Austin. They were, whether they meant it or not is irrelevant. They were at least shook my hand stiffly, firmly, looked me dead in the eye, and said how sorry they were for our loss. And it felt genuine,
Right.
I don't like any of them, Anthony Blinken, Austin, or Millie, or Mackenzie for that matter, at this point, because of everything else we found out since then. But at that time, at least they were respectful.
Right.
I can't say the same for our experience with Biden whatsoever.
It doesn't sound like it was anything but dignified.
No.
Do you think you'll ever get accountability? Or we as a country will get accountability for this?
Probably not. It runs too thick, too deep, and it seems historically, I've spoken to a lot of people now that there seems to be a lot of this that happens. I call it downward promotions. You should be shifted down or out, but instead you're getting promoted up. There's two in particular that Captain Ball and Lieutenant Colonel Whitehead. Captain Ball is now a major, and Lieutenant Colonel Whitehead is a full bird. And this is the same guy that said, "I don't know," to Tyler Vargas Andrews. I mean, what in the hell are you doing promoting this guy? Captain Ball had never seen combat before, never been in a situation, and froze, is what I was told. Obviously, I wasn't there, but I was told that he froze, and Taylor Hoover, one of the 13, as he was laying there bleeding out, was handing out his ammunition and telling people what to do, where to go, and start getting people, picked up, medevaced and out, as quickly as possible. It was, but then, you had who's the guy the press secretary guy that,
the former admiral?
Yes.
Kirby?
Yes, that buffoon. Jesus, he's out there going, "Well, for my perch, I didn't see any chaos." I'm like, are you out of your freaking mind? I mean, we all saw it.
Right.
Just the intent to cover up any screw up from that administration was just utterly appalling. We even asked General Milley, we said, what we would have expected from you, and I think we would have seen from somebody like General Schwarzkopf back in the day, is some kind of bullshit order like you just tried to tell these generals to close up Bagram and give up all our shit and move operations over to Kabul or to HKIA. That's where we would have expected you to slap your stars down. He goes, "That's not what you do."
Right.
I go, you can tell your commanding, the president that I'm not going to follow that order. If you go along with it, you're culpable. I mean, it's as simple as that. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. So we're coming up on the 5-year anniversary of this. What are the hardest moments right now for you?
Well, giving speeches, I have gotten very good at doing them, except for when it comes to talking about Jared. So luckily, when my wife and I tag team a speech and we go to a gala or whatever we're at, she knows that she's to take the part about Jared because otherwise I'm not getting through it.
Right.
I've given hundreds of them now, and I'm 0 for 100 on making it through without getting choked up. I keep saying one of these days I'll make it through one of these, but when it comes to talking about him, it rips me apart from the inside. Still,
I would be the exact same way.
But when it comes to talking about our nonprofit we started, to honor him and the 13 that we lost, that's where I jump in and I could just run with it, and that's my therapy now is our nonprofit.
What are the moments that bring you peace in all this?
Well, probably when I get to speak with a young person that comes up to me and says, "I want to be like your son. I want to join the Marine Corps. I want to join the Navy," or whatever it is. What's your advice? The fact that they respect me, in my opinion, given what we've been through, uh, ironically gives me a sense of peace, because this may sound weird, but we lost our son, but we've now adopted 100,000 others, because just like the brotherhood that exists within the military, it's a parental thing now too. When you're a Gold Star father or mother, you embrace all veterans as your kids in a way. Uh, Obviously different, but similar. And knowing that we're part of a club that nobody wants to be a part of, that label Gold Star family,
Right.
Does afford you some level of respect out of the majority of the community. Um, I still get from time to time veterans that will actually reach out. I just got an email right before this podcast from a veteran that was ripping my ass for my opinion on things, and it's almost always political. Um, it used to bother me; it doesn't anymore. But there's so much far more good out there and good people out there than there are bad. That trying to take a tragedy and turning it into something positive is my piece. Um, it's what God would want me to do. I think it's what my son would want me to do. And um, I was just down at our healing camp, which I know we'll get into in a minute, but I was down there yesterday getting my lawn therapy in. It's 171 acres, and I get to cut as much of it as I can in the hours I'm there. So that's my peaceful place, and I love being down there. My daughter's ironically on spring break, so she likes to go down there, and she always takes a girlfriend with her, and they go ride on the side-by-side all throughout the property, and she loves it down there. So
That's great.
Just surrounding yourself with family and those that appreciate your kid's service is the piece I look for.
Well, I can't remember if I talked about it before we started recording or after, but the last 2 years up here in Seven Hills, Ohio, which is it's a suburb of Cleveland, we've gotten together at Seven Hills City Hall, and the Mayor Biasiata up here 3 years ago. I told him I had an idea, and he invited me out to lunch, and so I go to meet him at lunch and to tell him my idea, and his fiance is there, her sister's there, her sister's husband's there, and her sister's nephew were there, and he invites me in to talk, and so I told him that I wanted to do this community day of remembrance on August 26th. I didn't want to do it on a weekend or whatever, and somebody even suggested I do it on a weekend because it would be more convenient and I can get more people that way. And I said, well, I want to honor these 13 heroes on that day, whether it's convenient or not, whether it's raining or not. I want to do it. So for the last 2 years, we've had our community day of remembrance in Seven Hills, Ohio. We say Jared's name out loud. I say it, and then everybody in attendance says it. There's uniformed military. There's members of the community. The siblings of Max Soviak have been to both of them. Boy, I would love for all 13 families to be there, but I know you're in, Missouri, there's California, there's all over the place with, obviously Max was from Ohio. And so this whole thing for me has been personal, getting to know the Soviak family like I have. And I went to Max's funeral, and I'd never been to a funeral for a 22-year-old. And it just hit me. And I'm sure you've seen one of the videos I've sent you, but but I met Rachel about almost a year after, what happened. And at first I told her, I said, Rachel, if you need anything for the charity, just let me know. I'm there for you. Anything you need, I'll help you. And she's like, Joe, what I really want you to do is help keep Max's memory alive. And I'm like, well, done. That's easy. Sure. It was a promise to Rachel, but that that promise was actually for all 13 families. And I do everything I can to say, for reasons to say Jared's name, or the other, the other 12, which is why I had that bill introduced here in Ohio. And it's about to be signed into law by the governor. I was told probably within the next 10 days, making Ohio the first state in the country to officially recognize the sacrifice that Jared and those other 12 made. And also everybody that was at Abbey Gate, because while unfortunately what happened to Jared and the other 12, there's people like Kelsey Lanehart, uh, Tyler Vargas, Andrews, that while they did come back, they'll never be the same.
Right.
I was at a birthday party for Max. His parents invited me out to the house, and I met a kid that was there at Abbey Gate. Young kid from Ohio. I mean, like you said, we call them kids, right? He was there. He had a service dog with him. Nicest kid that I could meet. I didn't ask him what was wrong, but I assumed he had some PTSD or some traumatic brain injury or something. Nice kid, but he was there. And I wasn't about to grill him at a party. But I did, I thanked him, and I told him what I was doing for all of them in the state, and he seemed to really appreciate it. So my passion project has been keeping their memories alive. So what do you do to keep Jared's memory alive?
Well, I'd say that every family out of the 13, most if not all, when we mention our kids' names, if I'm talking about my son, I talk about just him. But
Right.
if we're having a big function, or like we just had a big gala back in February, we have pictures of all 13 up there. We have their names underneath their photos. We mention their names. We say their names. Depending on the event, a lot of times we'll do like what you do, and we'll have one person say the name and everybody repeats it. We just did that at our last memorial ride, which is what is our event around the anniversary date. We call it the Angels of Abbey Gate Memorial Ride. It's grown very, very quickly now, and it's kind of becoming like a mini Sturgis here in the St. Louis area. But we have 13 different launch points from Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas. They motorcycle dealerships or any business really, we get a collection of 13 of them, and they rally people to meet at their parking lot, and then we converge on one central location, and then from there we get a police escort to the final destination. In this case, it's not too far from where we live. Unlike last year, we ended at Jefferson Barracks Cemetery and the park that's adjacent to the cemetery. But we have live music, and we do some speaking up on stage, and so that's when we always honor our kids. And pretty much everything I wear anymore is some piece of our merchandise from our nonprofit, because as you can see from the flag I've created behind me, I mean that I give away flags to people. We sell them. If it's going to be somebody that's going to have it seen, I literally will just donate one to them, just to keep all their names at the forefront. And there's so many that have made the ultimate sacrifice over the years, and we were cursed and blessed at the same time to get the amount of media attention that our 13 got. And I find that to be very important and pivotal, because it's not about our 13 necessarily all the time. It's about bringing awareness to the sacrifices made by military, by law enforcement, those that make the ultimate sacrifice in their line of work, protecting you and I, and everyone else. People, unfortunately, they forget. They always do, and they always will.
Yep.
But having enough events, honoring the anniversary dates like you're doing, those are always pivotal. And I thank you personally for making sure my son's name is mentioned there in Ohio. I'm doing the same for the Soviets here in Missouri and all the others. But we've been invited to a lot of great events that give us the platform to talk about it, which is always good. But I always, even like I'm doing in this podcast, I stress that it's not just about our 13. It's about all of them that have made the ultimate sacrifice. And ironically, we're sitting on 13 new ones right now from what's going on in Iran. Collectively, it didn't all happen at one time, but nonetheless, it's 13 more souls that have made the ultimate sacrifice for their country. And anytime something tragic like that happens, I usually get an uptick in emails and phone calls from people because what just happened in Iran is reminding them of what happened in Afghanistan. So, it's my nonprofit that I definitely have the biggest platform that it's not just Jared. I do it for him, but I do it for all of them. And, maybe now is a good time to get into that.
Let's talk about it.
So we started a 501c3 called The Freedom 13. The website is thefreedom13.org. What we're doing is creating recreational healing camps. The goal is to have one in all 50 states. We started here in our home state of Missouri. Each of the camps will consist of 13 homes for the 13 that we lost. Each camp will be built on at least 100 acres of land or more. The one that we are working on right now, our first camp, is in Bourbon, Missouri, and it's on 171 acres. We have 2 houses up right now. We have 11 more to build. These camps are meant for. So, do you know Travis? Travis Mills? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he's got the amputee camps. So if you lost an arm, a leg, or both, you can attend his camps, which is fantastic. I love the idea, and I love it so much. Basically, I'm mirroring what he did, but I'm offering it to not only those that may have lost limbs, but to the countless thousands that have the mental scars from the things that they've seen. And so by a healing camp, we're working on trying to help these guys with PTSD, suffering from PTSD, suicide prevention, huge one, service dogs, VA benefit explanations, employment, anxiety, depression. We want to create a safe community, a safe place for the veteran, law enforcement, or Gold Star family to come with their immediate family. That's very important. It's not just a veteran coming by themselves. It's a veteran and their wife or their husband and their kids. If they're young enough kids, they come to the camp. They spend a week there. So think like an Airbnb, except for everybody there is either gun-carrying first responder or a Gold Star family. Everything is elective while you're there. It's not a hardcore, in-your-face lesson learning situation. We're going to provide them access to the resources for the aid of PTSD, suicide prevention, anxiety, depression, all those things. And they seek the help that they know that they need, or maybe don't know that they need, and utilize that on their own terms. So each house that we build will purposely not have a kitchen in them, because the main house, the 13th house, is the central house. That is the main gathering spot. There's a chow hall already there. So every visitor, every guest will come to the main house for all their meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Each house is assigned a golf cart based on how many people they have in their party. A 1-bedroom is going to get a 2-person golf cart. A 2-bedroom is going to have a 4-person golf cart. A 3-bedroom is going to have a 6-person golf cart. But we're building 5 1-bedrooms, 4 2-bedrooms, and 3 3-bedrooms. And they stay there for the whole week. They come and they have their breakfast. After breakfast, they could jump on their golf cart. We've got 5 miles of riding trails throughout the property. We've got a fishing lake. We're putting in a shooting range. We'll be putting in skeet shooting stations as well. The shooting range, by the way, in many long talks with guys with PTSD, they're not afraid of loud noises. It's the ones that come out of nowhere. So for the shooting range, there'll be set designated shooting hours. So everybody's aware that, hey, on Thursdays from 10 to noon, shooting range is open. So nobody is startled by, a gunshot out of nowhere.
Right.
But we've got an in-ground swimming pool. We're putting in pickleball courts, sand volleyball. We're building a 50-foot grain silo. You take the top, lop that off, put posts down, legs. Now you got a giant like farmhouse gazebo, and we'll put a huge big screen TV in there. They can watch the ball games in there. Bonfire pit in there as well. We'll do the floor will be made up of custom bricks where people can buy a dedicated brick and dedicate it to some loved one of their choosing. But our first camp will always, each house will have a plaque outside the house that is dedicated to one of the 13. So we'll have a brief bio on who this is the house that Maxton built. This is the house that Jared built. This is the house that Taylor built. And then it'll be a little bio on who that person was. We wanted to offer this for free to all veterans. I've been approached by many veterans who said, please don't do that. I go, well, why do you want to pay for it? They said, because there unfortunately are veterans out there that seek out nothing but the free stuff, and they will be a massive burden on what you're trying to do. And I said, how so? And they said, because they're not going to be there to appreciate what opportunity they're being given. They're there just for the free meal, or they're there just for the free fishing and the free golf cart and all that. It's save this for the guys that really need it. I said, well, how much do you want me to charge? Because I wanted to do this for free. And we have a $13 a month campaign that we do, just like Tunnels to Towers does their $11 a month. Ours is 13 just because that's the number. But we figured if they paid 2 years worth of $13 a month to stay for the whole week, these are full-blown houses, not hotel rooms. You get the golf cart, you get the fishing, you get the shooting range, you get all access to all these different things. It's barely over $300 for the whole week. And that covers your whole family. It's not per person. So they very much appreciated that. They're like, that is a excellent number. It's not so much that's going to break anybody's bank, but at the same time, it's going to weed out the guys looking for the freebie stuff. I said, okay, if that's what we got to do, that's what we got to do. But if we get this thing going big enough, the mission we have is simple but monumental. We had to purchase the 171 acres. We couldn't find any donated land. That set us back $1.5 million right there. We have to raise money to build the homes and all this. All in, we're $3 to $4 million per camp, easy. That's assuming nobody's donating the land or nobody's donating the golf carts. You have to buy all this stuff. So it slows the process down too, because we're trying to find the wholesalers, the suppliers that are willing to work with us at maybe cost. That way it's not costing them anything, but trying to find a lumber yard that will give us all the wood we need at cost versus at retail slows that process down. And then if we're short on funds, like right now, we don't have enough money to build all 11 remaining houses. We just had a gala in February. We raised about $900,000 from that gala. That'll put in at least 3 houses. There's infrastructure that needs to be put in, septic systems and wells and this and that. But I welcome the challenge. I love it. I mean, I run 2 other businesses myself now, and on top of doing this nonprofit, and I still find myself working this nonprofit more than I do my own paying jobs, because nobody within our organization is paid a dime. I mean, 100% of your money that you help us with is all going in. I don't take a salary. Nobody takes a salary, but we will at some point have a small salary that goes out once the camp is open, because in the main house will be a veteran and or law enforcement and their family that live there full time permanently. They will serve as the camp director, and they'll be the ones that oversee all of operations. So for that, they're going to be living in a home, rent mortgage free, no utilities, no food bills, because the Freedom 13 pays for all that. So they'll earn a nominal salary. It's not going to be a huge amount, but it'd be enough for them to put some money away in savings, because they don't have any bills when they're living there. So we're very excited to get this thing going. And we have a volunteer day every second Saturday of the month, and I've already had a whole bunch of veterans come up to me that have been out there numerous times, and they said, I've gotten more out of this camp not even being open yet than anything I've ever attended before. And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, we show up and you have a short list of missions that need to be accomplished that day, and we can pick a battle buddy, go out there and get that mission done at our own pace. And if we get done early, we leave. If it takes us longer, we stay longer to get it done. It's just, that's one piece of the military I understand is missed greatly is that sense of purpose or that mission that you have. I've been told that by many veterans. So that made me smile to hear that. And, I encourage anybody to come out that happens to be in the Missouri area. But once we get this one done, if we can get this thing to grow some feet, then we'll be excited to start launching this in another state and continue to grow it from one state to another.
That sounds like an awesome tribute to Jared too.
Yep.
So if anybody wants to get in touch, the website again,
thefreedom13.org.
Okay. And $13 a month.
Yep. I'm here to break your bank.
I appreciate you've been doing this for an hour and a half so far. So I just have a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
And then I'll let you go. What would Jared want people to remember him about him?
That question reminds me of being approached by one of his direct commanders after we lost him. And he said, if Jared had 60 seconds, knowing what was about to happen was going to happen, and he had 60 seconds to decide if he wanted to be somewhere else, would he do that? Would he change anything? And I said, absolutely not. Jared died the only way I think he would be happy passing, and that was as a Marine. Would he still want to be here and married and having his own kids right now and grow old? I'm sure he would. But if he knew that he had to make a choice on how he was going to go, it would be as a Marine, not as an old man. He loved this country. That's why he joined in the first place. I just wish that people would respect the freedoms that they have now because of people like Jared, like Maxton, like so many others that have gone before him. That was one thing that early on that I became very agitated with right after losing Jared. I was out in public, and like anybody else, I was in line at a fast food place grabbing lunch or something, and some Karen is in there just bitching about her fries being cold, just making somebody's life a living hell. And I just looked at this woman, and I just went off. I said, "Are you out of your mind?" I said, she probably thought I was insane, because I probably was a bit insane for even bringing it up. But, it's these little things in life that people get so upset and butthurt about that mean nothing in the grand scheme of things. And we are in the greatest country in the world, and it's because of people that have laid down their lives to get us to where we are today.
Right.
And for that, I know my son died protecting the country that he grew to love in the short years that he was here. He loved it so much, he was willing to sign that dotted line and put everything on the line.
Well, I always tell people the best way you can honor veterans that didn't make it home, whether it's Memorial Day or really any day, I tell people you got to live a worth dying for.
Yep.
If you're not, it was a waste.
Yep.
So, and
so many people forget that, unfortunately.
yeah, I hope I'm living a life worth him dying for. So that is on the front of my mind with all the things I do, whether it's talking to a Gold Star dad or, having that bill introduced or something, my day of remembrance. I hope even if it's just showing compassion to somebody that may be a jerk and not deserve it. I hope that I'm doing something that, was worth those sacrifices.
I think if everybody remembers one word, and that is legacy, you are on this earth to create your own legacy, and don't waste it. Don't squander it. If you just go by and go to work every day and pay your bills on time and do the things you're supposed to do, you're not really leaving any kind of a true legacy. Right. And I don't mean monetary either. I mean, truly leave a mark in this world that makes the life better for somebody else, and try to reach out beyond your own family. I think that's what every service member does. They try to leave their mark in the world think of the kids that were involved over there in Afghanistan. Ultimately the entire 20-year war, for that matter, for any veterans out there listening, your service mattered. For what you did mattered, despite how fucked up the withdrawal was. Mm-hmm. These kids in particular, just that short stint that they were there, got 120,000 people out of that country safely. Call it 100,000 that should have gotten out. Okay. Think of the countless generations of people now that are going to be affected by the actions of what they got done over there. Yeah. We're talking tens of millions by the time these people that were saved have kids, and those kids have kids, and people that never would have even existed, but because of the actions of what they did over there. Yeah. The legacy, those heroes, and I'm not talking just R-13, I'm talking the whole lot of them that were over there. The legacy they left on this earth is so far beyond comprehension. It's not even funny, and it's a good thing.
Right. If you could say anything to Jared right now, what would you say to him?
Well, of course, I miss and love you, but I hope I'm making you proud. I mentioned earlier in this interview that he and I were always very competitive, and that little turd going out the way that he did and accomplishing as much as he did in that short amount of time he was a Marine, I can't even hold a candle to that kid. No matter how hard I try, I could live 10 lifetimes and not be able to still even compete with him on that level. So maybe it's a personal thing and people wouldn't understand our sarcastic relationship, but I'd call him a little shit because he won. I mean, he definitely drove the final nail home, and I can't compete. So I'm going to do what I can do with our nonprofit to help his brothers and sisters in service that are still here. It's in no way going to compete or compare to what he was able to help with, but at the end of the day, hopefully we'll both leave a good legacy, and I know he already has. So now it's my turn.
Well, before we wrap up, is there anything that I didn't bring up about Jared that you'd want people to know?
I mean, on a lighter note, and I joked with my wife about this after the fact, but at his funeral, no less than 7 of his girlfriends showed up. These poor girls would be like, "Oh, I was dating Jared." I'm like, "Oh, okay, we'll go back over there where the other ones are." I looked at my wife and said, "Oh, I hope my girlfriends don't show up to my funeral."
Well, I think at my funeral, some probably would, just to make sure I was.
No, take the time to learn the stories of not only those that have passed, but so many of us just ignore veterans that are around, every day. I'm not talking the old guys that were in Korea and Nam and all that. I'm talking about the younger guys too that served.
Mhm.
Learn about who they are, why they got into into the service in the first place. Um, Educate yourself about what these guys go through and why they do what they do. That might help shed a little light on seeing America a little different than you may already do. But as far as Jared goes, I mean, he was a hell of a kid. Anybody that never had the opportunity to meet him, I apologize, because you would have met one hell of a young man. He was a very cool dude, and he's greatly missed. I have a very good relationship with God, and I'm 100% convinced I'll be seeing him again someday. And until then, I keep his picture there. I've got two more up here, and I say good morning and good night to him every single day, as if he's still here. I visit his gravesite, but that's just his vessel now. So Jared is here with me everywhere I go, and he's still making sure people are doing the right thing. So he's just a hell of a young man.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm really glad you did this. I feel like I've gotten to know a lot about him, and I'm grateful for it. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for giving me a voice and let me introduce you a little bit more to my son.
Well, I really appreciate that. I'll get this link out to you soon, and if you want to share it or anything, you can do whatever you want with it.
All right. Appreciate that.
Okay. So thanks again for doing this for me. I really appreciate it, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Joe. I really appreciate it.
All right. Have a great evening. God bless.
You too, sir.
All right.